Comic panels are like musical notes. Small panels are short notes and big panels are long notes. And as the writer, it's your job to orchestrate these panels so that you can create beautiful melodies. Artists, you'll find this very useful as well, but if you're a writer, using this melody technique can take your script to the next level. And don't worry, you don't need to be able to read music, and this is 100% beginner friendly. We're going to equate a comic's panel size with a specific note and see how that plays out using real world comics. I'm going to use the American naming system for the notes because most of my audience is there. I'm also going to put the British naming system behind me because, well, it's better. We're better than you. No, we're not. We're not. So let's get our page and put some panels down. First, we have the 16th notes, followed by the 8th notes, quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. We'll take this page with this layout as our base and go from there. Stay with me, this will make sense. This is a pop song. It's totally functional, it works really well, although perhaps it's not the most inspiring. 3 rows, 3 columns, it does its job. It works for Watchmen. Now imagine that each of those panels is a single beat. The experience of the reader is steady as they go from left to right, up to down. And just for future reference, a beat is a quarter note. So if each of these panels is a single beat, then we can maybe combine 2 panels into one, which equates to 2 beats, or a half note, or cut a panel in half, which makes it half a beat, or an 8th note. Now, depending on how we arrange those panels will determine the speed with which our reader experiences those panels. And that's the key to all of this, and it's something that a lot of writers and artists don't really consider. The panel size is going to greatly affect how long our reader spends on that panel. So if we know that going into creating our pages, we can conduct panels that will influence how long the reader stays on a particular panel. Does that make sense? Let me show you. So instead of this, we can create this. Or this. The reader will spend different amounts of time on these panels depending on their shape and size. So let's apply this technique to some real-world comics to see how the reader might experience them. This page from Sex Criminals starts off with 4 8th notes across the top, followed by 2 quarter notes, a half note, an 8th note, and another half note. These aren't going to be 100% clean and they're largely up to interpretation. But if we play that out against a metronome, the reader might read it like this. Let's do this again, but instead we'll use a spread from Southern Bastards. This is my interpretation of how the reader might experience this particular spread. If you read comics with this metronome in your head, then you'll start to take note of how long you're spending on each panel based on their size. And so when you're writing your scene and planning out your panels, the size will be influenced by how long you want the reader to stay on that particular panel. So if your panel has a lot of dialogue in it, you'll want to slow things down and increase the size. However, if you have lots of fast and small actions, then you'll want to speed things up by decreasing the size of the panels. By thinking this way, you're essentially building the soundtrack for your story. And sometimes by adjusting the way that you think about creating comics, like thinking about them from a musical point of view, it can give you that extra inspiration or clarity when you're planning out your panels. This won't work for everyone because we all think and work in different ways. So don't worry if you don't care about this. That's totally fine, I'm not offended. Another way to use this technique is if you want to build up tension within a scene. So you could start off with relatively small panels and slowly increase the size as you go down the page. And if you imagine that musically, how will those notes slowly but surely build up? As the tension mounts, you could increase the duration of those notes to get slightly bigger each time, and then we release that tension with the resolution of a half or whole note. And if we want to create a somber moment within our scene, we may want to stretch out those notes either this way or this way. Maybe we can combine these two ideas by having the layout look like this. To me, this goes from fast to slow. Switch it around and it's slow to fast. Austrian composer Franz Schubert famously said, "I try to decorate my imagination as much as I can." And through the use of comic book panels, you're decorating the page in interesting ways that serve the story. It's one thing to have panel shape and size that are interesting just for the sake of it, but if you know why those panels are that shape and that size, then you're much more likely to create a comic page that will keep the reader engaged. But whether you know which panels are going to be big and small or not, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll create a page that flows well. And in this video, I'll show you how to do that.